Welcome back. A new book looks at the intense intelligence fight between Russia and the United States, which has led to what the book calls a, quote, ruthless game of hostage taking. Earlier, I spoke to Drew Hinshaw and Joe Parkinson, the authors of Swap, A Secret History of the New Cold War. Let's listen. I love to ask reporters who've written books this question. What's your favorite nugget of reporting in the book? There's many to choose from. I will let the audience know that.
Where to start? I think if you're a fan of real-life spy thrillers, which I always have been, and growing up I've always read John le Carré, Ian Fleming, and the authors that follow them, finding out the thing that's the most important to Vladimir Putin, the kind of asset, the kind of spy that's the most important to him, which is the illegals, the deep, deep cover spies who spend so many years building their cover that in some cases their own children don't know their identity.
Here in America.
Here in America, we all saw the Americans.
Yes.
This is the real life Americans for sure, but all over Europe as well. Putin has expanded this program, and we were able to, through reporting in Argentina, Mexico, Greece, Austria, track how these individuals spent decades building completely different lives to ultimately blend into the middle of Europe in a free access zone, Schengen, to be mobilized in preparation for the war in Ukraine. And of course, this couple who are on the cover of this book here, these two Russian spies who claim to be Argentines and their children, were just four of the individuals of the 26 who were swapped last year in that epic East-West prisoner swap.
Drew, your favorite nugget?
What surprised me about writing this book is you think that foreign policy is driven by, people sitting in State Department cubicles or the White House or the Situation Room. But this is the story of ordinary Americans who've been thrown into Russian jails and left to rot. And what is surprising about this world is the role that their mothers, their sisters play to liberate them, to push their government, to go up to bat against the Russian government. We're talking about ordinary Americans. One of the main characters in our book is a portrait painter in Massachusetts whose brother, Paul Whelan, was thrown into jail, and her name's Elizabeth. And she had to do, for nearly 6 years, constant battle against her own government and the Russian government to get her brother home. And that is thankless work, but it resulted in what is, I think, the subject of our book, which is this massive prisoner swap you saw last year.
I want to tell my audience something. I try to read all the books, but I don't get to all the books. So when I can't get to the entire book, I go through a process, which is I will open it up to a random page and see if the page works. I did that 14 times in the hour and a half I had to prepare for this interview. 14 different pages, randomly selected, just to see if there's something on the page that grabs me. All 14 pages worked. Everything works in this. This reads like a thriller. This reads like a novel, but it is journalistic, repertorial throughout. Ann Applebaum, who's a well-known and well-traveled journalist, writes in a blurb on the front page, "This is essential reading for an era when authoritarians barter in human lives." Is that the essence of this tale?
That's right. This is ancient. The pattern of grabbing someone and holding them to ransom is something that's happened since antiquity. And 20 years ago, this is something terrorist groups do. It's now something that governments do. China has done it. Russia has done it. North Korea has done it. We call it hostage diplomacy, and it's becoming a global challenge for the U.S.
And for Russia, it almost seems like state policy under Putin.
I would say so. I think Putin has definitely been the pioneer and the principal practitioner of hostage diplomacy. And you can see the expansion of it all the way up to more and more high-profile targets. We all remember Brittany Griner, the WNBA star, Evan Gershkovich, our friend and colleague who was taken. Putin has ratcheted up this policy, but what a lot of people don't realize, and we reveal in the book, is that he actually started this 2 weeks into his presidency. An American named Edmund Pope, whose case is nowhere near as well known, was arrested clearly on spurious charges by the FSB. And people may forget that Putin was not only a KGB officer, but he was chairman of the FSB before he became president. Edmund Pope ultimately ended up being freed because Bill Clinton had to call Vladimir Putin. At that time, the US had more leverage and there was less of an antagonistic relationship between the countries. But that was really a very early harbinger of what was to come. And Putin, as we know, maybe there's no such thing as an ex-KGB officer, but the power of the security forces in Russia now, they're the nobility, they run the country, and they're very much behind this program of taking and seizing Americans that they believe that they can trade for political leverage.
And Brittany Griner fit into that category distinctly. And going back to Elizabeth Whelan, the book goes into great detail about how there is a comparative difference when someone of fame is taken by the Russians and someone of comparative less fame, and how much more difficult it is for the families of those who are less well known to keep their family member's name in the conversation at the highest levels of the U.S. government.
That's right. Something that happened in...
Brittany Griner had advocates like this.
Exactly. Straight away.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Of course she does.
But then you had kind of ordinary Marines, veterans, who the Russians thought would resonate in America, but didn't. There was Trevor Reed, a Marine who was arrested on a kind of bogus charge of assaulting a police officer. There was Paul Whelan. There's a Marine there right now, Robert Gilman, who's still in Russia. Those cases haven't resonated in the way that Brittany Griner's case, for example, and we're all very glad she's home, resonated. And one of the reasons we wanted to write this book was to kind of show people that, look, this is something that's happening. It's happening to Americans like you and me. There was Mark Fogel, a teacher. This is a much deeper problem than most Americans realize.
I think what's certainly in Evan, and Evan fitted into that higher profile category because he was the first journalist to be arrested on those kind of charges since the Cold War. But one of the things I think that the book reveals, and what's so worrying, is that this practice is very effective because it reveals the asymmetries in our system.
Talk about that.
Putin, doesn't really have to worry if a Russian spy is put into jail in America or in the UK because he knows that person will wait it out. It's part of their mission. And there's no public pressure on him in order to do a deal. With us, it's a free society. People can campaign, people can lobby, people can advocate, and it puts pressure on the government. Plus, the whole essence of the West is that we put the value on human life. But what is the cost of trading that life? By trading, do you encourage more of the practice? And by trading, is there a moral hazard where Putin or other autocrats who are, responsible for this practice are making you constantly push through different moral thresholds? You trade an arms dealer for a basketball player, you trade a killer, ultimately, in a trade of 26. And it's very effective and it's very precise, and I think the targets are very carefully chosen and calculated.
Joe Parkinson, Drew Hinshaw, I told you folks I read 14 pages. I'm going to read all the rest. It's that good. It's been a pleasure. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.